So go ahead and state your name.
My name is D'Marti Burgos.
Okay. So you did the Peace and Happiness this Saturday, August 10th, right?
Yeah.
So my question to you, which is interested, I know you intricately have studied psychology, and I believe your bachelor's was in neurology, so you understand the brain, and I understand you just have so much knowledge when it comes to psychology and the human behavior. So I'm just interested on your take from what you got from the Peace and Happiness workshop.
Yes, I can connect it to neuroscience for you too, down to the structure of your brain and the synapse. Because I was thinking about it and I was really putting it all together after the workshop. So the way learning memory happens in the brain, which creates your perspective of the world, it's based on three major places. One is the amygdala, which is responsible for your emotions. The other one is the hippocampus, which is responsible for learning and memory, which is repetition. And the last one is the thalamus, which they all talk to each other. And the thalamus receives all the input of all your senses. And so all three communicate. And so my perspective of the world is based on emotional, repetitious, environmental stimulus. And the environmental stimulus can be the people, the places, or what my environment mentally is. And so it's very important to guard what you see, what you hear, and what you repeat to yourself. So your self-image, your self-knowledge of who you are, that is very intricately connected to your emotions, and we will learn them in an emotional sense. So if we keep saying things like, gosh, I couldn't do that, I wasn't worth it, or I always mess up, gosh, I just fail all the time, it's just me, that's what I do, versus, it's okay, I'll get it next time, I know I can do it, I'll just try it again, I'm not afraid to fail. But the first example becomes emotional, and you learn that. The brain really learns that. And so after many years of teaching yourself who you are based on your environment, the people, what you hear, that synapse in the brain is an actual physical connection, and that physical connection represents that association that you created, the meaning of the event that happened in your life, right? For me to change that, I have to do repetition to change that.
Yeah.
And so now I have to keep repeating to myself, not the lie, but the truth that I now understand again and again, because I have to overpower many years of this first connection.
So how did the Peace and Happiness fit into everything you just said?
Peace and happiness really breaks down that formula that connects the thalamus, the hippocampus, and the amygdala all together. And for that formula to be put into words would be, there is an event, and I perceived it a specific way, and based on that perception, it becomes part of my identity. And so the problem with that is sometimes our perception was false, and my identity is not actually attached to anything that happened before. But now it is, because it's emotional and it's mine and I own it. And if I live in the past of an emotional memory, good or bad, that becomes extremely real to my brain. My brain doesn't know the difference between it happening last week or today or 10 years ago, because the synapse, it stays the same, it doesn't change. So that, for example, that memory from when I was 10 years old that affects me today, if I go back to that memory, that synapse is still only a 10-year-old synapse.
Yeah, that's why I say, the world is filled of basically, without knowing, a bunch of pissed off or hurt kids running around.
Yeah.
Would you recommend the workshop?
Oh, yes, absolutely. To go through the thought process of actually seeing things for what they really are is very, very difficult. It can be challenging because everything in our environment tells us otherwise. And it's actually very simple and very logical once you actually sit down and use life examples and put it into the equation, into the formula.
Is that what you're saying the workshop kind of was?
That's what it does, yeah. The workshop explains the logic of how you can think your way through life effectively and in your favor for your own personal worth and success and happiness and peace. Everything comes from untangling things that perhaps are not of service to you.
Awesome. What was your biggest takeaway for you? Or what did you like the
My
best?
biggest takeaway is that everybody has the capacity to be complete creators of their happiness and peace and worth and everything. You're one thought away from everything that you've ever desired, but it's interesting because we don't normally think about the sadness or the frustration, but we never think about okay, so what do I do about that? And we always think, okay, what are you going to do about it? But no, what are you going to do about yourself to change that?
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you for your time and thank you for attending.
Thank you for having me. It was great.